Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. And what Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is essentially about is basically it takes place many years after the events of the first film. Basically, they've been going about their daily lives, but they realize that all of a sudden they are no longer able to legally obtain their names, mainly because Kevin Smith has stolen basically their idea for Blunt Man and Chronic. He is now rebooting it, so Jay and Silent Bob have to do what they can to go all the way to ChronicCon and try to get those rights back and make sure this film isn't made, mainly because it is being made illegally. The film is also very much, so, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot overall, I was looking forward to this film. I really do enjoy Kevin Smith for the most part. I think he is definitely a very specific kind of creator, but one that normally does win me over, although not recently. I think recently he really has been on a down spiral. Yoga Hosers was all kinds of terrible, and I do think, though, he is trying to do what he can to reinvent himself. Now, when it comes to the Jay and Silent Bob characters, I love the first two Clerks movies. I think they work very well there. The first Jay and Silent Bob film, though, I was actually going to review it, and at first I was really enjoying. Like, the first 20 minutes I think is very entertaining for sure, but the more that film goes on, the more it just really starts to wear out his welcome and really does start to get old, and they really just felt like characters that are better as side characters. So I was really hoping that with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot essentially being Kevin Smith's comeback film and acting as that, as you know, acting as his comeback film, I really did hope that this could be a better film for those two characters, one that I thought overall was more cohesive. And I will say this right now, this is definitely a more cohesive film, but unfortunately, it still didn't do a lot for me. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, it's a film that a lot of people are going to love, and a lot of people are in fact loving, but just for me, didn't really do a whole lot. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And that's easily one of the best things about this movie. Everyone here is really great for sure, especially the duo of Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith. They still work very well together here. They still have that really great rapport that they have had in all of these movies, and it's great to see that even so many years later, they still are very much into these characters. They haven't lost that spark at all, but it's Jason Mewes who I think really gets to stand out here. Not only is he very entertaining and still just has a really natural likability to him, but he also does have some genuinely really heavy stuff in this movie. He has a lot more genuine scenes here, and I thought he actually did do a really good job. And I know people don't think Jason Mewes is the best actor in the world. I've heard people make fun of him, you know, for a long time now, but this film does show he is capable of handling more dramatic material, and I do think he did a really great job in this film. This is easily, I think, the best performance he's ever given as this character. I think he really did heighten it for sure, and definitely is one of the best aspects of this film overall. And Kevin Smith also does do a really good job. He's still very entertaining as Silent Bob, and they do give him a lot of really great moments, but it really is Jason Mewes that I think does stand out here, and I think really did command this entire film. Another great addition, though, is Harley Quinn Smith as Jay's daughter, actually, and I thought she did a great job in this movie, and I liked her in Yoga Hosers. Even though I hated the movie, I did actually think she had potential in Yoga Hosers, and same with this film. You know, it's nothing amazing. There definitely are some scenes with her that are a little shaky, but for someone who is acting just because of nepotism, she actually did do a really good job. And I do think this is one of the better, you know, creator trying to cast his daughter in things, sort of, you know, casting situations that have turned out a lot better. You know, a lot of them don't usually turn out that well, but Harley Quinn has shown that she does have talent. I think she overall did do a good job in this movie. I do definitely want to see her in other things because I do think she has potential for sure, and the scenes between her and Jason Mewes especially, I thought were really well done, and I really did overall like her here. I thought she was very talented for sure. And then the rest of the cast here also does do a pretty solid job. I'm not going to lie, though. I thought most of, even though I did like Harley Quinn Smith, her friends, I really didn't think were that great. I thought that you could tell that they were not really professional actors. I didn't think they did that great of a job, and I just wasn't really all that into them. They were very on and off for me. Everyone else, though, I mean, Kevin Smith essentially got back everyone he's ever worked with, except for, oddly enough, Will Ferrell. That's the only person that like didn't come back for the first movie. Well, Elijah Dushku didn't either, but like I'm talking about like really big name actors. He's like the only one that didn't come back, and all of them do give really solid performances here. Like Shannon Elizabeth, Jason Lee, Ben Affleck has some really good stuff. Rosario Dawson. I mean, everyone does do a really solid job here. And that's the thing I will give this movie. Even though, yes, I ultimately didn't really like it, the entire cast here, you can see that they're passionate about it. You can see that they really do want to be in this movie. They really did care about making sure this turned out as good as it possibly could. And I will definitely give the cast that. I think they overall did do a really good job here. Now let's get to the thing that I do think ultimately does hurt this film, and that's the directing and the writing. Look, again, like I said, the passion is definitely still there. Kevin Smith puts way more passion in this movie than he has in years. This is not the kind of film that he's directing just because he wants to piss off critics or just because he is angry at like all the, that kind of like the general zeitgeist of audiences. Like that's not what he's doing here. He's doing this for the fans. He's doing it because people want him to for years, and you can see that effort that is put into it. And I really do appreciate that here. And one of my complaints with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is that I didn't think the directing was really all that great. It felt very all over the place. I had a hard time trying to figure out what Smith was going for, and I do think his directing here was a lot better. This film does feel a lot more focused tonally. Yes, the film is very much a comedy, but he does actually try to give it a little bit more heart, and that's something I did appreciate. I really like the effort that was put into this movie. I do think his directing was overall really good. Ultimately, a lot of my complaints with it largely reside in the screenplay, which I just don't think is that great here. Look, I get it that this film is trying to parody, like, sequels and, reboots and remakes. I get that's what they're trying to do, but in doing so, they end up making a film that basically goes with all of those tropes. All the tropes that they're making fun of, this film does still exhibit, and I'm talking down to scenes that were in the first movie. There's literally a scene with Jason Lee in here in the very beginning, in, like, the first act of this movie, that is almost the exact same scene, except they changed it from Jason Lee to Ben Affleck in the first movie. And I get what they're going for, but it really just didn't work for me at all. And a lot of scenes like that just really drag out. And it's mainly because the movie's just, in my opinion, not very funny. I think there are some jokes that could be very funny. There's a great gag at first with Silent Bob where, because the fact that he doesn't talk a lot, the film incorporates, the use of technology very well, where he communicates basically through emojis. Anytime he's feeling something, he'll like type out an emoji, and that's a really cool idea at first. The problem is, like most of the jokes in this film, they really start to overdo it. They really start to milk this joke to the point where it just isn't funny anymore. There are jokes with how, since Kevin Smith also plays himself in this movie, there's a lot of jokes of how, oh, you and Bob look similar. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's a fun joke, but like they really start to overdo it. Or how, Kevin Smith keeps putting his daughter in movies because Harley Quinn Smith is in this. And there's just a lot of winks and nods there that I think a lot of people are going to appreciate. But for me, it just got annoying after a while. Ben Affleck's in this movie, so we got to poke fun at Ben Affleck as Batman and, how people have received him there. Or Matt Damon's in this movie, who played Loki in Dogma, so we got to talk about him and Tom Hiddleston. There's a lot of jokes like that here, and usually I don't have a huge problem with that. I don't, but the film really overdoes it, and after a while, it just becomes a film full of references, and it feels like those references got in the way of telling a really good story that I honestly did kind of get behind. The main story in this movie, like I said, it's far more focused. My biggest issue with the original film is that it starts off very simple, and then it just veers off in like 10 different directions. There's so many parts of that movie that just don't feel coherent at all, especially once they get on that initial road trip. It just doesn't feel very coherent. This film, on the other hand, does feel a little bit more focused. Very early on in the film, we established that, basically Jay had this daughter that he didn't know about, and the rest of the film is him, she doesn't know that, that, he's her dad and things like that. So a lot of the film is him trying to rekindle that relationship, him trying to be that father for her. And that's a really good arc. And it actually does get us to take the character of Jay a little bit more seriously. He actually does have some really good development here, which is something I really did appreciate about this film. Anytime the film is focusing on that story of him trying to be a father to Harley Quinn Smith's character, I think the film is genuinely really good. And I was actually really getting into it. Again, the problem is they keep going back to just these references that just don't work at all. The cameos also do feel very forced. And look, I will say this. A lot of the jokes here probably did go over my head because I have not seen every film in the Askew universe, and this film assumes that you did. It's not just Clerks, not just Clerks 2. They reference Chasing Amy, they reference Mallrats, they reference Dogma, films that I have not seen. And look, maybe I should have done my research. Maybe I should have gone into this film knowing that, I needed to see all of these films, but I didn't realize that this was going to be a sequel to literally almost every single film that Kevin Smith has done. If I had known that, then that would not have been the case. I would have probably watched all of his other films and then watched this eventually. But having not known that, it was kind of hard to connect with some of the jokes here. They just weren't really landing for me in that way, and I just don't think they did that great of a job. And the group that Jay and Silent Bob encounter as well, I actually did like a lot more this time around. In Strike Back, it's very clear early on there's just something off about them. In here, they give a little bit more time to get you to know them. There's a really good motivation for why they are all headed to Chronicon, because, Jay's daughter and things like that, they're also heading over there, and you're not entirely sure why, but there actually is a really good motivation there that they then ruin in this really awful twist in the third act that really just felt like it was here so they could try to do their best to replicate the, final fight of the first movie, which just really didn't work for me at all. And that's going back to what I said before. Even though the film is trying to make fun of certain tropes and reboots, they still end up doing a lot of them. A lot of those tropes are very much in this movie. There's a lot of things that are very similar to that first movie. There's some key differences for sure. I'm not going to pretend there's not. There's a lot of differences here, absolutely, but there are some scenes that do feel very copy and pasted from the first movie, and that's something that I definitely did notice and did kind of irritate me a bit. So yeah, the writing here is very 50-50 for me. There are some things I like, but for everything I like, there's just something I don't, and that really did bring the film down. I will say, for a film that is largely very cheap, the cinematography does not show it at all. This is probably the biggest budget that Kevin Smith has worked with. It very much is his, Avengers Infinity War Endgame in that way, where it's basically him just giving it his all, and I do think the cinematography was really good here overall. The scene at Chronicon especially, there's some really great, there's some really fun scenes there for sure. I think they did a good job cinematography-wise, and I really did appreciate that here. The score in this film is fine, I guess, not really a ton to say about it, and the editing, I do think this film overall was too short, and I do think that is one of the things that does hurt this film, is that I don't think it was very paced well at all. The first half of this film really rushes to that plot line, similar to the first movie. They really try to get into it as fast as they can. And once we get to that road trip, though, it's a lot more slow paced. It's a lot more of getting to know all of these characters and things like that, why they want to go to Chronicon. And there's a genuinely really good, motivation there, which I really did like seeing. But once we get to a certain scene involving this group of people that the group encounters, that's when I thought this film almost went completely off the rails. It feels like there's about 15 to 20 minutes of movie that was just cut out here completely. And look, maybe it's just me, but there were scenes in the credits that weren't in the movie, and I'm like, that really should have been here. One scene especially involving Harley Quinn Smith's character, I'm like, that really should have been in this movie. I don't know why this was cut out, and it was very odd that they just left that out of the movie entirely. There are quite a few scenes that are like that. When you guys see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, but that was definitely very jarring for sure. And like I said, I just don't think this film was as paced paced well as it could have been, and that definitely did hurt the movie for me. But again, I can't deny that the passion was there. I can't deny that Kevin Smith definitely is on the right track here. While the movie didn't work for me, mainly because of how little I laughed, which I really only laughed, I want to say like 6 or 7 times in this movie, my audience got a huge kick out of it. I think if you are a fan of Kevin Smith, this film will absolutely win you over. If you have loved, but you have to have seen all of his movies, I think, for you to get the full effect. Like, you have to see Dogma, you have to see Chasing Amy, you got to see them all. You can't just be like me and see Clerks and Clerks 2 and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and then go into this one, because it's connected to basically every movie he's done before. But if you've seen it, I think you will overall get a real kick out of this. And I hate being a downer. I really do hate being the pessimistic in this review, because again, there's a lot of passion put into it, but I just don't think this film ultimately worked for me. There are things here that I really do appreciate. The more focused story, the more emotional stuff they try to do with Jay and his daughter, I really did appreciate that for sure. I love how much passion was put into it. But ultimately, this is a film that I think is largely made for fans. I think you overall will enjoy it for the most part. But just for me, I just didn't end up getting a lot out of it. I do think it's a better outing for Jay and Silent Bob overall. But as a film, it just didn't do a whole lot for me. And it is one that I probably am going to forget very quickly after I've done this review. So overall, I am going to give Jay and Silent Bob Reboot actually the same grade I gave Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which is a C. Overall, guys, that's it for my review of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. Let me know if you guys saw this movie overall, lift your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.